Shalom. Open with prayer. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this gathering here today. It's so great to be in your presence and in fellowship with people. We thank you for this time we have together. We pray that this service would be acceptable to you, that you would be honored by it and blessed by it, and that it would glorify you in every way. And we pray that your spirit would be felt here today, and that everyone would encounter you at this time. So it's in Yeshua's name we pray. Amen. Start with the Shema. Please stand. Ready? Shema Yisrael, Yahovah Eloheinu, Yahovah Echad, Baruch Shem Kevod, Malchuto, Leolam, Vayen. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Blessed be the name of his glorious kingdom forever and ever. B'atah et Yehovah Elohecha b'kol lafka u'kol nafsheka u'kol meodecha v'hayu ha'darim ha'elet asher anoki masamcha hayom alecha v'shir natam alecha v'dir hatam v'shiftika v'techa u'letecha v'derek u'sharpaka u'novecha u'shartam leo ha'itecha v'hayu t'tokotenecha u'katam ha'maziza v'techa u'sharpaka. And you shall love Yahweh your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your might. And have these words which I command you this day be upon your heart. And you shall teach them diligently to your children, and speak of them when you sit in your house, when you walk by the way, and when you retire, and when you arise. And you shall bind them for a sign upon your hand, and let them be frontlets between your eyes. And you shall write them on the doorposts of your house and upon your gates. B'atah le'recha kamocha, and you shall love your neighbor as yourself.
All right. So,
Blessing over the children.
blessing of the children. Children come to the living room. I would take parent 1. Jared, you would be actually Sarah or Brandy, parent 2 for the daughters. Yeah. Can you read it? Can you come up here?
Hey, come closer, or Sarah.
All right.
He's going to be parent 3. Spread around over this way. There's more room right here. Yeah, comfortable over here.
Come over this way. Out in front of this.
Okay, there we go. That's better.
Come on over here, Matt.
What's
I couldn't see around you, so I'm
Parent.
Yeah.
So I'll be parent 1. Sarah, parent 2.
Okay.
Jared, who will be parent 3 for the boys. Robert, who will be parent 4. Don't act like you're not. Can you see it? Okay.
He said, yeah.
All right. And Greg, parent 5. And brother Bill, can you see parent 6? All right. Ready? Blessing over the children. Yahovah bless you and keep you. Yahovah cause his face to shine upon you and be gracious unto you. Yahovah turn his face towards you and give you peace.
Blessed are you of Yahovah, my daughter, for you have been kind and generous. Yahovah is your Elohim, and his people are your people. May all people know of certainty that you are a virtuous daughter.
For the sons, may Yahovah make you like Ephraim and Manasseh. May you be a man after Yahovah's own heart.
For both parent your mouth speak with wisdom. May your heart meditate with reverence. May your hands do the work of Elohim has given you. May your feet hasten to follow the path that Yahweh has led out of your life. May your entire life be fruitful.
May Yahweh's full will for you be accomplished in your life. May the spirit of Yahweh, the spirit of wisdom and understanding, the spirit of counsel and power, the spirit of knowledge and the fear of Yahweh be upon you.
May the grace of Yeshua HaMashiach, the love of Elohim, and the fellowship of the Ruach HaKodesh be upon you now and forever.
Amen.
Amen.
Sorry, guys.
All the tall girls, which is basically all of the kids. It's like children.
I was me and his were saying you see the tickets so there you go.
Okay.
The blessing of the covenant.
Do it.
Baruch atah Yahovah, Eloheinu melech haolam, borei pri hagafen. Amen. Blessed are you, Yahweh, King of the universe, who creates the fruit of the vine.
And over the bread.
Baruch atah Yahovah, Eloheinu melech haolam, hamos yelekonim haaretz. Amen. Blessed are you, Yahweh, King of the universe, who brings forth bread from out of the earth. And he took bread and gave thanks and broke it and gave it to them, saying, This is my body which is given to you. Do this in remembrance of me. Likewise, he also took the cup after supper, saying, This cup is the new covenant in my blood, which is shed for you.
Sarah gets first pick. She always does something.
Anybody worried about Aaron?
Jump in.
She wasn't done. It's like more than that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I need to take her away before I
Lee, you want some? Yes,
We'll also put it up here if you want to wait.
Do we want to go over there and do it so we don't get... And I can tell Verity and then I'll get the drop the bread in.
I know, right? That's how much spot.
Okay, we gotta take it to the kitchen too. Safe.
Bro, they got great juice.
Be careful, the tray's kind of wobbly.
I was like,
History, I was like, how philosophical He has his priorities.
I mishanded to you both know.
Well, that's his phone.
I know, it's already broken.
Thank you.
So our reading of the writings, right, or our psalm reading this week is Ecclesiastes chapter 8 through 10. Not going to read the whole thing. I have these portions broken apart for us this week. I will be the first reader. Jared, you be the second reader. And then Olivia, I would have you read 10, 5 through 7. Very small portion, but read it aloud. It's a very interesting, important thing. All right. So Ecclesiastes chapter 8, starting verse 1. Who can be compared with a wise person? Who else knows what a thing means? Wisdom lights up the face and softens a grim appearance. Keep the king's command because of the oath before God. Don't be quick to leave his presence, and don't persist in doing what is wrong, for he does whatever he pleases. After all, his word is final. Who can challenge him? Why are you doing that? Whoever obeys his command will never come to harm, and the wise person will know the right time and judgment. For to everything there is a right time and a judgment, since people are greatly troubled by uncertainty over the future. Even when the event takes place, who will tell them about it? Just as no one has power to keep the wind from blowing, so no one has power over the day of death. If one is drafted to fight a war, one can't send a substitute. Likewise, the wicked won't escape death by their wickedness.
All this I've seen as I apply my mind to everything done under the sun when one person's tyrannizes another. Thus I saw the wicked buried. They have even come from the holy place, but those who had acted uprightly were forgotten in the city. This too is a futile thing, because the punishment decreed for an evil act is not promptly carried out. Therefore, people who plan to do evil are strengthened in their intentions. For a sinner can do evil 100 times and still live. A long life. Although I know that in the end things will go well for those who fear God, because they fear him. But things will not go well with the wicked, and like a shadow he will not prolong his days, because he doesn't fear God. There is something frustrating that occurs on earth, namely that there are righteous people to whom things happen as if they were doing wicked deeds, and again there are wicked people to whom things happen as if they were doing righteous deeds. I say that this too is pointless. So I recommend enjoyment. A person can do nothing better under the sun than eat, drink, and enjoy himself. This is what should accompany him as his work does his work, for as long as God gives him to live under the sun. When I applied myself to gain wisdom and to observe how people occupy themselves on earth, that people's eyes don't see sleep either by day or by night, then on looking over all of God's work, I realized that it is impossible to grasp all the activity taking place under the sun, because even if a person works hard at searching it out, he won't grasp it. And even if a wise person thinks he knows it, she still won't be able to grasp it. I apply myself to all of this, sifting through it and concluding that the righteous and the wise, along with their deeds, are in God's hands. A person cannot know whether these people and deeds will be rewarded with love or with hatred. All options are open.
There is an evil I have seen under the sun, as a mistake coming from the ruler. Folly is said in many high positions, while the rich sit in a humble place. I have seen servants on horses, and rulers walking on the ground like servants.
Hallelujah. Shabbat shalom.
Darkness tries to hide.
Everybody good? Situated? Shabbat shalom. I had a good week. Yeah. Sort of. Anybody got anything they want to share right off the bat? Praise report? Coming off that high of good worship.
My hand feels better this week.
Your hand feels better? Yeah. Okay, good. Yeah, it's okay? Yeah, work is work. They wouldn't call it work. I had an old pastor tell me that. Pastor joke about it. They wouldn't call it work. It wouldn't work. Good. All right. So we're in our second week, second Shabbat of our 3-year cycle that I am in the process of developing. Everybody still got their screenshots from last week?
Pictures. It wasn't even a screenshot.
Sorry, pictures. Pictures of the screen. That's why I keep thinking screenshot. Pictures of the screen. What's up? You need that? Okay. I'm actually going to, before everybody leaves, hopefully, I'm going to print it off. Right? If not, I'll send it to you one way or another. Plan on sticking around for a little while today? Hang out? We'll definitely afterwards get to it. I'll print off a couple copies for at least the next couple of weeks. All right, so our portion of the Torah that we're in, Deuteronomy chapter 6, verse 4, and all the way through chapter 7, essentially. Some things from this chapter I wanted to talk about that are, significant. Like, what's that first one say there, Tyler? The first bullet on the screen, what does it say?
Nope, over that.
All the way to the top, right? The Shema. How important is the Shema to God? Anybody got a... Go ahead, man.
Say, well, they teach the kids how to, they teach the kids it literally as they're 2 years old. So you think it's a very important thing.
I listen. Okay, that's a good point. I listened to multiple people or read articles from multiple men of God from all different types of walk, including those who aren't necessarily believers in Yeshua, and especially those who were Jewish, whether they are or not believers in Yeshua. They all said the same thing. First, whether they were Hasidic, Karaite, Reformed, right? Parents barely went to synagogue. First, and in some cases, for some people, the only passage of Scripture that they know or ever taught. Some of them it was the first, some of them it was the only, right? And that's Deuteronomy 6:4. And we say it every Shabbat at the beginning of our service. Let's repeat it real quick because, again, like I said, it's that important. Hear, O Israel, Yehovah is our Elohim. Yehovah is the one and only. You shall love Yehovah, your Elohim, with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your resources. That's straight out of the Chumash, your Jewish publication society, plus a little bit of, some Hebrew rabbis interpreting the Shema, some more specificity. So again, I offer the floor to anyone who's ever heard. One of the things I've heard, again, in the past, and like getting ready for this recently, is that a Jewish man, again, of all sports and stripes, would love for this to be the last thing they say before they die. I actually heard 2 different sources who are not believers in Yeshua as the Messiah, but they are respecters of his story in the Brit Hadashah. And they both said they believe that if Yeshua was to have said anything before he passed on the cross, before he said it is finished, he at some point would have said the Shema. I was like, whoa, that's crazy. That's a big claim. That's how important the Shema is to the Jewish people of today, and I believe we can find hundreds and hundreds of pieces of evidence of the Jewish people of all of recorded history. It's just what they say, and what they,
Before a lot of the Jewish soldiers put it into battle, they would say,
Yeah, we saw a video last week of an IDF soldier singing, the Shema before he went on for his tour. Yeah, no, absolutely, I agree. We could spend all day trying to go against it, but not doing so. But I'm going to tell you, I'm going to move on because we could spend all day on just the importance of the Shema. Wait.
What actually is the importance of the Shema in terms of what it's saying? That's what I would ask.
Okay.
The room.
Yeah. Yeah. What does everybody think the importance of the Shema is?
I think it's a reminder. It's the statement that we're supposed to live by. The Lord our God, the Lord is one, and that everything else should be based off of that.
We say, what is our the Shema?
I think it tells you who you are, who your Elohim is, and the fact that he is monotheistic and that there's no others that are there except alone. And it also tells you that you're Israel.
Good. That's right. That's a good one. What Yeshua spoke on a lot in his ministry. Or I would say spoke on a lot, but and confrontations with often in the different gospels of what is the greatest commandment, right? Go ahead, Jerry. We'll let you listen.
No, what was I? No.
Yeah, because that is verse 5. A lot of people, in the Shema with is the that he is the one, Jehovah is one. But I know a lot that continue on and say verse 5 as well, the greatest commandment. And then we say this passage every week as well. We go on, right? You shall teach them thoroughly to your children, and you shall speak of them while you sit in your home, while you walk on the way, when you retire, when you arise. Bind them as a sign upon your arm, and let them be ornaments between your eyes. And write them on the doorpost of your house and upon your gates. Talking, and these matters that I command you today shall be upon your heart, and you shall do these things that you just said. Something interesting I noticed from some commentaries was verse 7. Your children, rabbis say that means students. I don't like that. I didn't like that at all. I didn't like the way that they. Because now here's the deal. One thing that's important to know and to understand about Judaism, especially Hasidic or Orthodox Judaism, is they really love or look up to, want to be a part of. It's their life desire to be in a shiva all day long and study Torah with all the rabbis. And it's a great ordeal, and that's what they want to do. So, in essence, and that's what they wanted to do for a long time in history, because this comes from ancient commentary, where they say students. Children are students, right? And they kind of have this concept of replacing it with, any guy that comes to the Shiva and wants to learn from you is my child. And I feel like that has an element of sort of dismissing that, no, you actually have children that this is specifically talking about. And that's why I said go to verse 20. Verse 20 is pretty clear, chapter 6. It's if your child asks you tomorrow, saying, what are the testimonies and the decrees and ordinances that Jehovah, our Elohim, commanded you, you shall say to your child, we were slaves to Pharaoh in Egypt, and Jehovah took us out of Egypt with a strong hand. Jehovah placed signs and wonders, great and harmful against Egypt, against Pharaoh, and against his entire household before our eyes. So basically, you recant the Passover story.
It also goes back to bringing child up in the way that they should go. That's your children.
Right.
Bringing them up in Torah.
Right. No, and I agree with you. And I believe, don't get me wrong, I don't want to sound so negative. I don't want to talk bad about the Hasidics or the rabbis, right? Rabbinical Judaism, just because I don't want to talk bad about anybody. So I'll come back and say, in balance, right? I'll come back and say, it's not that they don't teach their children. Like I just said about the Shema, even the girls know the Shema, from birth. like 2 years old, like now. So as soon as they start talking, they're saying the Shema. And I know they teach their children. We know they teach their children because they actually have a very high. By the way, if you didn't know this, they have a very high stay with the family tradition rate. Small turnover of all groups of people. They even beat the Mennonites and Amish. Yeah.
You mean as in staying in community or staying
Staying in community. Staying with the faith, growing, teaching their children the same things that they were taught. They have a very strong success rate in keeping that going. So again, balancing it with I don't like the way they say it in the commentary, and I also would warn us, if we were to say applicability of this versus their viewpoint for us today. I've actually experienced throughout my life, and some of you may have as well, where ministry, right, overtook my life to the point to where I neglected. It was some small periods of time, but to where I neglected my children for the sake of other people's children. And Paul's very specific about the qualification for anybody to be in leadership and teach, to get up in front of a group of people like this. I'm not sure I'm qualified. My kids are pretty bad. I'm just kidding. I mean, I'm not. I sort of am. But he's very, very harsh. This is one of Paul's very harsh statements in saying if the household, if his household's not straight, better not even listen to it. It's kind of what the statement reads like. Besides all the translations of it, even the translations are pretty strong, and that's a pretty straight up, in your face type. Hey, your kids are acting bad. If you are similar to Eli, Samuel, right? Eli the priest and his 2 sons being crazy, the fires going out, not burning the temple like they're supposed to, doing all kinds of crazy stuff, pagan sexual things, all that kind of stuff. You're disqualified if your children are running amok and your household is not in order. Look at y'all. Don't disqualify. Everybody else may blame me and won't blame y'all. So don't be out of balance in this area of ministry and reaching out to other people. Always make sure this command and what it means in this whole passage, even going through to verse 20, means exactly what it means. Every day, when you wake up, when you go about, when you go to bed, when you sit and eat, whatever you're doing, talk about these things that I command you. And I personally believe, we're not going to read it all, but I personally believe what Jehovah, what Moses is talking about right here is he's specifically talking about what comes next, right? And what comes next in these next couple of, or what came before, what came right before, right? Not just the Shema, but what did we read last week? It was the retelling of the 10 Commandments, right? So I believe this is just a go through. This is what I commanded you. I spoke from the mountain. I talked to you. I said all these things. Shema. Now, all these things I just told you, specifically the 10, talk about them all the time. Right? Also, an interesting thing on that same note right here, verse 8, right? The binding on arms and ornaments between your eyes. Does anybody know? I mean, I know a lot of you do. Some of you are sort of newer to Hebrew roots tour, folks. You guys know how the ancient and current Jewish rabbinical groups translate verse 8, what they do, actually do physically. Craig, have you ever heard of this before? You ever seen the pictures of the Shiva students that have leather wrapped around their arms, and then they have those little boxes on their forehead? I should have put a picture in here. Teflon? I say it. They literally believe there's 4 times in Torah, right, where this is at, where it's mentioned. An interesting thing I found out that Rashi, who's one of the commentaries inside of my Umash, his grandson actually came along and said, "Grandpa, you're silly. All you rabbis are silly. This is a metaphor, right? Like, it's an important metaphor because let's see if I can find. I wanted to read this article. Yeah. So Rashi's grandson rightfully interprets the Tefillin. Sorry, I'm getting the L's and the F mixed up. It's Tefillin. If you ever want to look up a picture of it, right? They're taking this passage of binding these commandments and these things that I taught you today on arms and in between your eyes. They're taking that passage as literal. Rashi's grandson, Rashbam, I think was his name, interprets this passage as a metaphor which demands that we remember the Torah always and treasure it like a piece of fine jewelry. Because when this was being said, one of the things that women did, especially during this time, a big cultural thing, even now today in the Middle East, in some cultures, still remains, is they would wear those really beautiful, like, headband bracelet type things on their head, and they would wear beautiful bracelets and things on their arm. So what he continues to say is that this should always, we should remember that the Torah always and treasure it like a piece of jewelry. Rashbam and even like a lot of Karaites and groups of people that did not go along with the rabbinics realized that not everything in the Torah is to be taken literally as a command. The classic example of circumcising the foreskin of your heart, right? It's not a literal, it's a metaphor, right? So the belief was that this was a metaphor. And it shall be for a sign upon your hand and a remembrance between your eyes. There's some other places, like in Proverbs 1, verses 8 through 9. Listen, my son, to the teaching of your father, and do not abandon the Torah of your mother, because it is a beautiful wreath for your head and a necklace upon your throat. See, same concept and idea of the metaphor that's being told here. Do not let truth and righteousness, Proverbs 3, verse 3. Do not let truth and righteousness leave you. Tie them upon your throat. Write them upon the tablet of your heart. Proverbs 6, verses 20 through 21. Keep, my son, the mitzvot of your father, and do not abandon the Torah of your mother. Tie them upon your heart always. Do don them upon your throat like a necklace. Right? So these things are supposed to be jewelry, fine, precious things that we keep as way above even the worldly ornaments, right? They are supposed to be that important to us and with us always.
The one that say in the one passage where he talks about the women not adorn yourself with fine jewelry, costly jewelry, or whatever, not adorn yourself with good things of God, godly things that can come out of their skin.
Sort of the reverse metaphor of that, right? Like, yeah.
So that's what it's called. That's what makes it. But also, I don't know if you were going to say this, but I like the perspective of the binding the commandments on your arms and having it between your eyes is in for your arms. It's representative of the commandments covering everything you do needs to be bound by within the commandments. So all that you're doing, and then for between your eyes, it's like everything is done with the perspective of God's intentions in mind and His commandments in mind. So it's like you got to look through that lens of God keeping God's commands on everything that you do.
That's good. I just thought about this. Obviously, right? What's the actual physical thing God told us to wear? Not metaphorically, tzitzit, right? So not like you don't wear reminders. It's just this particular lesson. It's more of a metaphor reminder. Anybody got anything else?
It also kind of isn't really totally the same thing, but it reminds me of Ezekiel 9:2, 9:4, where are killed.
Ooh, bringing up some very, really, I feel like you get a little bit of chills whenever things come together in a week. I actually just got there, I think I was talking about it earlier, as if you're listening to a discussion or teaching on who the 144,000 seals on their forehead are in the book of Revelation. The good guys, not the ones wearing the mark of the beast.
But the ones that are marked with his.
But he is not.
Which is also called Shabbat as well. It's Shabbat having started, yeah.
It's up there, John.
Also talking about these things to put on. It talks about putting on the armor of God, and that's all metaphoric. But he goes through and tells you this is the actions that go along with that. This is the things that you have to do to have on this armor, quote unquote.
Yeah, I've always, right now, I'm convicted. Like, I've always been convicted about not making that something, the armor of God, Ephesians, I think it's 6, right? Like, having that be something I really think about. I always have routines. That's one of the armor of God being something that I put in there with that morning prayer, whatever devotion I'm doing, right, that I just have it. Just to, make a reminder for me. I'm serious. I promise. Not just talk. So, yeah, all good stuff. No, I agree. Anything else? Anybody else? I like it. Good discussion. Yeah. So, chapter 6, verses 10 through 13. I thought it was pretty mentionable. You read it, strong language of, hey, when I bring you to this land, that I'm gonna have, there's gonna be stuff in the land for you already, houses, like food, you ain't gonna have to work. Great blessings are coming to you, right? And then this statement in 13, or more so 12, right? Beware for yourself, lest you forget Yehovah, who took you out of the land of Egypt, from the house of slavery. Yehovah, your God, you shall fear him, you shall serve, and in his name you shall swear. That was another thing. That's the passage where it actually one of the places in the Torah where it actually says to swear in God's name. We talked about that last week. If everybody remembers, I think it was last week or maybe the week before, where I talked about how Hebrew manuscripts of the Gospel of Matthew show us that when Yeshua was preaching the Sermon on the Mount, or post-Sermon on the Mount, you could say, the other sermon he preaches after he gets through the Beatitudes and all that stuff. He basically says, you've heard it say, right, do not swear falsely by this or by that, right? He says, swear. Actually, in one place it does say swear falsely. Then it goes on, I tell you not to swear by anything, right? And then it says, don't swear by this, don't swear by this, don't swear by this. Well, in the Hebrew manuscripts, in multiple places where it says, don't swear by this, don't swear by this, the word in some of these Hebrew manuscripts has actually been either, some say inserted, some could say if it was a copy of an original, it's actually right there. And there's some Greek manuscripts that have it too. But there's so few of them, the way they think is like, well, the majority of them don't have it, only these few have it. So a lot of times they won't put the word in your modern translations like NIV and other things like that. But what should be in all of those places in Matthew, I think it's chapter 7, right? You may follow along with me, I'm not sure. This should be the word falsely. Don't swear falsely by this. Don't swear falsely by this. Makes sense, because what does he say in the very end? He says, let your yes be yes and your no be no. Right? So, it's not a contradiction between Torah and Yeshua. We swear in Jehovah's name because we're his people. Be careful of us. I'm not trying to be like the rabbis and tell you not to, right? That's where Yeshua ended up having to teach what he had to teach. Because they were saying, you can swear by anything falsely, just not God's name. Yeshua was saying this too. No. Right? But be careful, like I said last week, you're going to swear in his name. Better not take it in vain. Do what he said. But the key thing here, 10 through 13, that I really wanted us to think about is, don't let the blessings cause you to forget. Alright? Has anybody known anyone again, not talking bad specifically about a specific person, but known anyone over the years to whether it be wealth or fame or some combination of the two, to leave the faith or forget Jehovah. They were big talkers in the beginning when they had nothing, and God brought them through that. And they were like, it was all God that did it. Jehovah did this for me. But then after a little while of that success or that comfort, they were like, I'm not really sure God.
What happened to a smaller extent? I mean, we kind of do that today.
Absolutely.
I mean, we trust about things we don't think of.
Yeah, this is the thing.
I'm good with
I am too. No, I agree with you. I agree with you on a smaller scale. That I'm pointing out the bigger, worst examples, but you're right on a smaller scale. I literally recently, whenever I get overwhelmed by my to-do list, right, and I've got things that need to get done, and I don't feel like I have enough time to do them, or I'm not doing things that I should do or supposed to do. I've had a moment where, to your point, Greg, I stopped and said, that's stuff, man, this is cool, but, blessed, great, this is, and giving some praise and recognition to God for those things. But, back to what I was saying to begin with, I've had experiences, I'm not sure if anybody else has, I'm sure probably you have, where something has caused someone to forget the memorials that they should have in their lives that God, Yeshua, specifically the Holy Spirit, I have done the best. I think I've done the best I can over the years to keep some certain points and places in my life in my memory at all times, so that when I start to act foolish, I can be like, no, look, this is obviously, my doubt, or I'm not feeling it. You can say, I always come back to how dare I forget? And I'm talking, guys, I'm saying some marriage-saving, at times life-saving moments that could not have been anything but the man upstairs looking out for me and mine. And I really, sometimes I probably tell the stories way too often. Some of you probably heard the same ones, and sorry for being my friend for more than 5 years, probably heard the same hear 20 times. Because they're that important to, and don't get me wrong, I want to create new ones. I want to have new places where I can go, look, that's where God, I want the story to get better and continue. And I haven't done that so well in my own personal life, but I definitely don't want to forget. And that could be a daily thing. It needs to be a daily thing as well. Or moving forward to the future, whatever God has for us and has for this fellowship, for sure. Remember.
Those confirmations can really help our faith. I agree.
Right, and it's scary, like we were talking before. It's scary when somebody loses them all.
Right. He had. He told me about it.
Right. And just on a side note that causes me to sort of explain something. We had a good conversation last week in the kitchen talking about, and that was last week, the week before, sorry, getting all the weeks mixed up. Talking about the different denominations, what they believe, some personal spiritual experiences that some of us had or all had to open this to, because we're getting to this place with Shavuot, the book of Acts, where we're going to get into it deep, and we're getting to the place, obviously, where you have to be as a fellowship. All right, like I talked a couple of weeks ago, what do we do next? Like, what is our call? What are we supposed to do? We got ideas, we understand certain things, but how are we supposed to go? We go, how are we supposed to go? And what, specific things we can do. Sometimes it's easier, sometimes it's a little bit more difficult, but one of those things is, hey, I want to be like the book of Acts people and hear the Holy Spirit tell me, don't do that. Right? So, all kinds of things that we've been discussing and that matter and are important for us in that same, place. I'm careful when we talk about these past experiences to obviously not be like, hey, that could have been a false prophet, that could have been somebody who's preaching another God, not the one I know. But I want to be careful before I do that, because I think that's where a lot of these people get into the places where they've had experience. They've literally felt the physical presence of God in the church, right? Not in the Hebrew Roots movement. And they easily dismiss all that stuff to, no, that's just they label it all in one big general group, right? Instead of dealing with, no, there were specifics. That was God. You know what I'm saying? And a lot of the temptation in our movement and in Torah studying is for us to get to the place of where we dismiss all. I remember my wife, after our first year of Torah observant living, teaching, learning, right, said to me, what about? And at that point, even though with all the wrestling I had done, I was like, no, all of that stuff is still truth. Like, we can see it right there. Like, everything we experienced, I don't believe it was the devil, right? And I don't think it was this or that or the other. So we even had our own personal struggles. So I see where anybody can come along and try real hard to reject where God has brought them from. I believe that's a part of that. Don't forget, right? Like, I believe it's a part of be careful, okay? I don't want to say this because it's such an extreme thing. I say it too often. Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, right? Like, don't get me wrong. I believe Messianics are definitely throwing the baby out with the bathwater. I'm talking. You might even, not such a high measure. It might even be the lesser thing you're doing that will slowly cause you to be like, whoop, there goes the baby, right? Like, just don't get to that point. Do I think that was funny? Glad you're paying attention. Glad you're paying attention. Good. All right.
Well, now, and I think if you can compare that to Exodus as well, where the physical presence of God was with the Israelites in the fire, and fire by day, fire by night, fire by day. Anyway, and Moses was like, how do we know where it goes?
Yeah, I'm not going anywhere with that here.
So I think it's really important that
That's right. That's good. Yeah, and going a little bit, just a little bit more. His face showed to the point where he had to wear something over his face. Like, this kind of the theme we've been talking about, getting to the book of Acts type stuff, right? The power of God, the presence of God, His power, and its effect. It's real, actual, real world present effect. But yeah, Exodus 30, 32, somewhere around in there. One of my favorite passages, and for at least 3 of my children's bar mitzvahs, calling out ceremony that we had. Don't look at me like that, Kinsey. I'm sorry. We'll fix this, I promise. For 3 of them, one of the passages that I had them read from the Torah was the passage where Moses was like, we cannot get up in here without you going with us, right? I thought that's very important for anybody to start out with. No. All right, what? Yeah, Matt did too. I believe Matt did. All right. So some more controversial space, right, for this passage would be the driving out of the enemies, wiping them completely off the face of the earth. This is where a lot of antagonists of Scripture come to, and they read these portions and they're like, God was a genocidal maniac, right? Probably just the obviousness of truth winning, right, is that even archaeologists of no religious stance who have in recent years uncovered Canaanite traditions and rituals and all the archaeological digs, and they're learning things in the way that they talk about them. They say these tribes in the land of Canaan at this time rivaled the death and destruction, personally, eternal, evil, messed up weirdness of the Incans and the Mayans and the Druids. Like child sacrifice, sacrificing of people, the way that they, like, we're not talking about just paganism, we're talking about like a depth and a darkness that is pretty disgusting. Down to the point where there's some evidence out there that they skipped paganism. They were going straight to the heart of specific demons, names, like stuff, the things that they worship. People are now trying to put it in scary movies. By the way, this case, I have an unhealthy attraction to some of those things, and over the years, part of it has been me looking at the train wreck that was coming, right? Can't help it to watch. And so, like, I've watched things and seen things, and there's been some stuff where I literally had to, because it was so dark and so evil, and I realized that it was a real thing. Like, these Hollywood people and producers put the real stuff in it. I come to find out this stuff is traced back to, now they're finding evidence of the name of this particular demon that's in this particular movie. To, I believe it's I want to say it was the Hivites, right? Worshipped this particular demon all the way back. When we walked out, Brandon didn't even remember going to see it. She was falling asleep halfway through. When we walked out of the movies, I literally for days was like, I can't get clean. I don't know if I want to do this on Facebook Live.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll tell you afterwards. Don't forget to ask. So, anyways, point case being, these people did unbelievably horrible things, and wiping them completely off the face of the earth is not a genocidal issue. It was a behavioral issue, right? And the thing, when I say that, it sounds so soft, but it would be no different than today's, if somebody is okay with what people harm, but capital punishment, right? And that gets heavy, that gets mixed, into some, like, innocent people end up getting killed or that kind of thing, right? That there is an idea out there that says a murder proven and seen, especially witnessed, its punishment is death, right? Well, these people did worse than murder on a regular, consistent basis. That's being proven, right? So all the antagonists who call God out for him, saying, I will deliver them before you, and you will smite them, and you shall utterly destroy them. You shall not seal a covenant with them, nor shall you show them favor. You shall not intermarry with them. You shall not give your daughters you shall not give your daughter to his son. You shall not take his daughter for your son, for he will cause your child to turn away from after me, and they will worship the gods of others. Then Jehovah's wrath will burn against you, and he will destroy you quickly. Rather so shall you do to them. Their altars you shall break apart, their pillars you shall smash, their sacred trees, just saying, shall you cut down, and their carved images shall you burn in fire. Right? Don't play around with this stuff and don't mix with this stuff, is what God is saying. Yes. Controversial. But I'll say it like I heard this week. God's smarter than we are. Sometimes it's obvious he's smarter than we are. We better listen, because we don't want to be in a bad spot.
Lots of times pastors say politics is a foothold of something.
A what?
It's like a foothold, just one little toe of getting into something like that.
Right. Right.
What is this?
Yeah.
You may not have the intention of being graphic. You want to be curious about what it is.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And that's why
It's not you.
that's why I said, reading the movies that day, I was like, ooh, okay, it's going too far, too fast. My curiosity, I gotta leave this. I gotta leave this alone. Hurt. Like physically.
But it, sorry.
No, you're fine.
I didn't know.
But you're good. No.
No, yeah, it says that's why he said that don't marry with them, don't be ensnared by that stuff they're doing, because it'll be like a trap. And it says don't even pity them whenever you drive around. God drives before you, because of all the, he says every abominable thing they've done, even sacrifice.
What is that?
So there's no.
It's weird.
It's not that controversial. They were pretty bad. I mean, in my opinion.
No, I'm with you. I'm with you. I'm just saying.
Like I was, that
From a-
people,
from a-
yeah, people that would. I know that there's a lot of people that bring that up in terms of, atheists or whatever. To me, if you read the rest of it, you'd see. I mean, clearly, God has a reason to wipe them out. They have no excuse for what they're doing.
Yeah. And on that note, kind of like some other things we talked about already, there's multiple places where this is reiterated. Right? The Leviticus, Exodus, later on in Joshua.
And it's not only the atheists either. It's like New Age Christianity. Old Testament, mean, evil God. New Testament is the loving, forgiving, do whatever you want God. And that's their justification for, well, we're not listening to the Old Testament mean God. But he said he's the same today, tomorrow, and forever. So you can't have it both ways.
And I know it's hard to do so for some people, right? Maybe not Jay, maybe not Jared or myself, right? It is hard for some people to reconcile love that we know God is from a New Testament perspective and from a Torah perspective with some carnage, right?
God is all love, but He's also sovereign over everything He owns.
Well, I was going to, right, so that's the thing though, I was going to stick with just using the word love.
Yeah.
I will tell you, we read this today, like in Ecclesiastes, right? Like, in our reading, if you were listening, Solomon was basically saying, like, go ahead, try to figure it out. Go ahead, try to figure out God's ways. You can't, right? He gave me wisdom, and I still can't, right? He gave, I got extra, and I still can't do it. Go ahead, make your life way, try to do something. But I'm not trying to say it's not worth. Hey, love carries with it. You don't protection. It carries with it boundaries. It carries with it, hey, we all know. And we all have had experiences. I am almost 100% on this. Where someone, I'm not trying to make us higher than anyone else, right? I'm sure we've all been in places where sin rules and reigns in our lives at times. But we've all been at a place in our lives where we have been confronted with just some of the ugliest of people. It's come at us, come against us. And when I say that, I mean potentially, I'm talking people. I'm not talking about a magical, imaginative idea. I'm talking about real, pure evil from other people. I believe there's measures of how that should be handled, and I believe the Holy Spirit should guide us in dealing with that. Because there's times where, we can look at Shaul or Paul and say he looked like he was coming after the Christians, killing them. We can also sit around and justify why he did it, how he did it, because he thought he was doing the right thing because they were coming against it, right? But still, like the anger, anyway. Point of case, there's probably measures and different ideas of how to, let's say different ideas, different paths that at the time where you're at, the Holy Spirit is going to have you handle that kind of stuff. But I would go so far as to say there's stuff that is just not, it's Canaanite level, even in our lives today, right? I'm sorry, it's really easy for me to go, yeah, God wiped them out, drove them out before me. That's His love for me. And you can ask, well, what about the Canaanites? What about them? Right? Hey, like Solomon, I ain't trying to figure that out. They probably had their chance. There's passages that actually say, I'm trying to get to them before this point. Right? Like, there's places where Edom's left alone, and God's like, hey, don't mess with him. Go ahead.
Where is it that it says at the time of the iniquity of the Amorites?
Right. In Exodus, I don't remember exactly where, but like their iniquity is not completely full. So basically, who knows? There could have been people inside of those, the Amorites and some of the other people who were in some way, in some interaction with God, worth saving, and they were, right? But at the point, there's a point where it gets so bad, there ain't none of them, right?
Well, is it not not love to end the child sacrifice, the things that is going on, the evil that's going on, is putting a stop to,
Right.
I
heard it explained best by somebody this week. Again, all this stuff comes together, right? I love what it does. But our idea of fairness, right? And we're like, right? A lot of everything, including our decisions not to keep Torah. If we're a believer in the church in Christianity, and we're like, we read this and go, this says I'm supposed to do this forever, but I don't want to. That's it. It really boils down to what you want. And fairness, a lot of times, becomes your own construct of what you want, not what the Creator of us all says is what you need. Yeah, but what I just said, though, that's the love piece, right? And those who choose to only do what they want will hurt the ones who choose to do what they need. And so in love, God's like, you're mine too, but get away, because I'm going to protect the ones who choose, at least a remnant or a piece or a part, choose to do what they need.
And his ways are higher than our ways.
I almost also see it as a sort of love in that destruction too, because like with the children, if they grow up in that culture, they can store up wrath against themselves.
Right.
So in a way, he's also preserving their children possibly to directly say that.
Right.
But I mean, if the child dies.
Right. At what point, like if it's in the battle and there's a place where the Amalekites, not even a child is supposed to be alive. They were like, oh, how dare you talk about abortion?
Oh, yeah.
How dare you talk about, these people who did child sacrifices? But right here, God told you to kill everybody, including the women and children. Right? Again, the idea and the concept is, as horrible and nasty as that sounds, it's like you said, are the children going to grow? First of all, what's already on them? And I'm not trying to say they're not innocent, right? Quotation, right? To where they would have to deal with stuff throughout the rest of their life because of where they come from and what was around them. It is most likely, I don't have the proof, right? The ways are higher than our ways, and thoughts are higher than our thoughts. It is most likely that there is a level of mercy happening there so that that group of children existing at that point in time don't end up in a place where they give themselves and their souls, so to speak, over to more unrighteousness. Go ahead.
Even with Esther, the persecution that they faced was like by Haman, an Agagite, who, if Saul would have killed everyone, man, woman, and child,
including and especially King Agag.
Exactly. Then that would have not happened. If you do what he tells you to now, then you could be setting yourself heartache from later.
Like you don't do
exactly. Right. Like you said earlier, his ways are higher than our ways. He knows better than us, and we just have to trust in him and trust that he knows what he's doing.
Yeah, and I think we honestly get too caught up in, like I said, the fairness thing, what we want type deal, sure, but I think we also too get too caught up in. And this might sound crazy and offensive, but we try to punch people's ticket to heaven or hell, right? We try to be like, yeah, like for instance, I don't want to sound arrogant towards, but one thing I've always told people when they're like, man, why all this punishment by death and why all this driving people out? And like the instance with Saul and the Amalekites, why wiping even the animals, kill the animals? Like I said, don't let a sheep, be left. Why, all that when it comes to God and the image of God, right? I get to a place where we all already we're already there. We're going to keep repeating it, right? His ways are higher than our ways. His thoughts are higher than our thoughts. But in asking those questions and being concerned about them, what we're doing mentally is we're basically being like, well, that's it for them. Oh, how horrible. Again, what I was saying earlier about not wanting to be arrogant, right? One thing I've told people for many years is, guys, God used death and dying, I personally believe, especially when you look at the whole picture, to sort of scare people into obedience, right? Like, for instance, we talk about Uzziah, right? And the new cart, King David, is bringing the Ark of the Covenant back to Jerusalem. And the cart, and the ox is carrying the cart, and the cart tips. And Uzziah reaches out and touches it. And he dies. Right? Those Yeshua folks should be like, I can't wait to see Uzziah. Like, and I'm not being trying to be corny, right? God's wrath was upon the whole, it says the wrath of God is what caused that to happen. Because they were doing something their way, not his way. Right? Uzziah, I'm not punching his cart in hell. You know, like, seriously, he's not going to be punished for eternity. As a matter of fact, I can't wait to meet him. I'm almost sure I'm going to see him one day and be like, rough ride, huh? No, not really. Not really. Actually, you know, he got spared a lot. Let's go back to Ecclesiastes and talk about what Solomon was saying. You got a one-way ticket out of here. Good job. There you go. Sorry, I don't mean to sound suicidal. I'm just saying, right? That, you know, like, if you really look at it in the full picture of things, you know, I'm not damning every Amalekite donkey to hell. Okay? Like, I really am not. And who knows, 10 generations before that, maybe there were lots of people who one day we're going to see in the future. You know, like, I don't know. Just don't punch people's ticket to heaven or hell by reading scripture. Don't. It's bigger than that. You can step outside and see the bigness of it to an extent, you know, without being judged. But be prepared. The atheists are going to come for you. I'm just saying. Have an answer, right? What did I say last week? Be prepared. Oh, boy. Sorry. I know we said we were going to short it up. I thought my bullet points this week were going to help us out. Obviously not. All right. Yeah. The reward and do not fear them, right? Really, really key aspect I caught in chapter 7 as well with the driving out. Right? Don't fear them. Like, and here's the deal. Besides all the conversations we just had, they were scary. Right? And remember what happened. Not going to go here. I'm just going to mention it. Something for the future I'm sure we're going to talk about a lot. There were giants in the land. Okay? Yes? I am a proponent of Nephilim. Not proponent, I should say that. of the idea of Nephilim. And I believe that what God had to tell them, you know, and the Chumash has it in exclamation marks. Do not fear them. They were big. They were huge. The land was scary. The what was going on with their worship and everything else was fear-worthy to the point where I had to say, don't be afraid. I'm bigger than they are. Right? And again, I probably think that has a lot to do with the temptation of them wanting to join over, because they'd be like, whoa, look at all these powerful, you know, strong people, right? We talk about this in my household a whole lot. We're real careful. With as much as we are fans of, we're real careful about all the mutant and superhero stuff. Like that could definitely be a futuristic problem. Anyways, I'll leave it
Every
there.
time we watch a movie, I'm like, yeah.
Be quiet, Matt, and get us off. But the most important takeaway, do not fear them. All right. So, we're a little bit and halfway through. This week, we're actually only going to take a 20-minute break. I was going to say 15. So, 20 minutes, everybody, restroom break. All right? Come back here. 20 minutes. You good? I'll say 5 or 6 live. I don't know how you do that. So, pause it.
Is there a stop?
So we'll be back in 20 minutes.
Yeah, I guess.
4 o'clock. Okay.
What